Welcome to The Hidden World of Women, a podcast brought to you by Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. My name is Emma and I'll be your host for today's episode. Today I'm joined by another amazing woman for the next episode in our Journey into Motherhood series. So today I'm joined by Jen. Jen works in finance. She has, I think probably her husband would think that she runs her own rescue farm. She's a wife and she's a stepmom to two girls. So thank you very much for joining me today, Jen.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And thanks for joining me so close to Christmas as well.
Yes, it's a crazy time.
It really is a crazy time. So I really appreciate you making the time to chat with me today.
No problem.
So I probably should have asked you before we started this, but whether or not this is okay to talk about, and I didn't, so sorry about that. So I've known you for a long time, probably closer to multiple decades rather than just years. Definitely closer to multiple decades.
You don't want to think about it,
Yeah, it's better not to think about it too much. And I think growing up, you never had that deep desire to be a mum. Is that?
No.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. Definitely not.
No, that was not where my life was heading.
No.
And so you did actually make you made a life choice that you didn't want to have children.
That's correct. Yes.
And now you're a stepmom to two girls.
Yes, because life makes its own choices.
Yeah, that can happen, can't it? So best laid plans, and then all of a sudden, that's not necessarily what you're looking at. So how did that happen?
Well, essentially, I just met the man of my dreams, I guess you would say, and he had kids, and I did at that time make a conscious decision. Knowing obviously he was always upfront about his children. I met him at work when we were working in FIFO in South Australia, and the boy next door in the dorm. I travelled so far. And we got along so well when he had kids, and I sat back and thought, is this really what I want to do? You know, knowing how much of a massive impact it's going to make on our lives. And I always knew they'd end up with us full time eventually. You just sometimes know these things, I think. And I thought, no, he's worth it, and just pursued it.
Now, do you still think he's worth it? You don't have to answer that. It's okay, because he may hear the answer. So.
But I mean, every parent really would have a moment where they go, why did I do this?
Yeah.
I'm sure of it.
No, I was more thinking about the fact you've been married for a while now. So, still the boy of your dreams. Those things can.
Right. Well, yeah, it's been 5 years now.
Yeah.
The kids actually moved in just after just before our first wedding anniversary. So it wasn't for about 6 months after we got married. So it all happened very quickly.
Yeah. And that must have been a heck of a change for you.
It really was. Before that, we had the kids in the school holidays, because when Colin and I settled into a whole relationship, he moved over to Perth because he was from Adelaide to stay with me, because we were flying in and out of Adelaide anyway. And the girls' mum moved them to Queensland and things like that. So it was...
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she actually ran away with them for a short time there, but we found them.
Yeah.
And so it was not such a thing to not be around full time for them. It was obviously a massive decision to make.
Yeah.
And they used to come and stay with us in every school holidays for the whole school holidays. So it's kind of nice for them to have a break, as well as we got some proper time with them instead of just a dinner and things like we were getting before that. He did have them. So when they first did that, he did have them full time, in his time off. But
that's what I was going to ask. How did it go when? So you fly in, fly out, and so you're both flying into a different state, and then they live in a different state again. They're coming to stay with you. Did you have to both take annual leave in order to actually be able to look after them, or how did that work?
Because we were so FIFO, I guess some of the time we did. We must have, because it wouldn't have worked out that we were at home all the time for the school holidays. We did obviously try to move our roster around as much as we could to accommodate being home for the school holidays for them. And the South Australian holidays and even the Queensland holidays were different to the WA ones as well. So that did help that other people could be home for the holidays. So yeah, there was a lot of leave that we used to take, and we used to use all of our like frequent flyer miles for them and all sorts of things to
Yes.
constantly booking flights. Like it was very expensive way to do things, of
Yeah.
course. And the poor kids had to learn to fly by themselves for, from a very young age. I
So
think the
so
youngest
how
was five,
say that
when
again?
they started coming over. Youngest was five,
5, and so the eldest was 7?
5 and 7 when they started flying to Perth. Because I remember she
Wow.
was the youngest they were allowed to fly unaccompanied.
I can't even imagine that. So my youngest is 9. I can't imagine her flying alone at
Yeah,
all.
it's a bit scary to start with. I think they dealt with it very well, actually. Very impressed with the kids.
Mm.
You drop them straight at the door, at the gate. You have
Yeah.
to be there, and you have to pick them up from the gate, and then they're escorted by the airline staff the whole time. And so it's not too bad, but still would be very frightening for a young child.
I imagine it would have been very frightening for you guys as well.
Ooh, yes, and you have no real control what they're eating, and the state that they come off. They've usually been down in coke and all
That's what I was
sorts of
thinking.
things.
How many times have they pushed for their
Yes,
drink cart to come round for an extra drink?
all that too. Oh my god, they were very hyperactive, but that's okay. You're just
Yeah.
happy to see them.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so how old were they? So they were 5 and 7 when they came into your life?
4 and 6.
4 and 6.
Yeah.
So what was that like? I think, when people have children, you get them from new. So you get to learn to be a parent as they're growing up, and as those ages and stages come up, you're learning and evolving as you go. You inherited a 4 and 6-year-old. Like you didn't have the 4 or 6 years of experience to try and, to sort of learn as you went.
Yes, that's right. I think it is definitely one of the most difficult things as a step parent of any sort to pick up someone else's training of them, in a sense, someone else's parenting styles, and you don't really have a say in anything, and you kind of just have to go with the flow and try to just get to know them as people more than anything, not try to be a parent, especially in that situation. And hopefully it's okay. It depends how long you've got them for, and
Yeah.
you have to obviously keep them safe and things like that. But you do try to have that step back to allow the birth parent to do all the discipline and all that sort of stuff, and you just try to be there for them. But it doesn't quite always work that way. Obviously, you've got to step in sometimes. And
Yeah, I've got so many questions. So many questions. How does that feel? Feeling as though, you've got children coming into your home, but I guess, from the beginning, did you feel like you didn't get to step in and be a parent and that you had to hold back? And if that was the case, then how did you feel about that?
yes, it's very difficult. I belong to a few Facebook groups, things like that, and it is something that a lot of stepmothers and stepfathers do struggle with, especially I think the mother role, because you're leaned upon a lot. As much as we want things to be equal, we all know that the mother role, it tends to be the key.
Yeah.
And anything you do is criticized, and anything you say, it all goes back to the birth mom, and you've got no say in anything, and they basically take over your entire life for the time that they're with you, and your house, and you can't do anything about it except to pretend to be happy about every moment and do your best to look past a lot of things. And I mean, some people probably have wonderful experiences where the children are just so happy to be there,
Yeah.
that it all goes swimmingly. But most of the cases, I'd imagine, especially children of divorce, they go through a lot of different stages of their life and a lot of different emotions. And I mean, mine especially went through a lot of trauma, and
Yeah.
it was very difficult for them to try and bring someone else into their life
Yeah, and
like that.
trust somebody else. Did it?
Yeah, and from out, yeah, you just don't feel good about it all. It's just not a nice feeling, and it's
No.
something you have to really try to train yourself to deal with. I read a lot of books to start with. There's a few out there, The Happy Stepmother and Step Monster, and they talk about getting your own space and walking away. And which I've never really found an easy thing to do.
No.
I feel like you're ridiculed as well for not wanting to be part of the perfect little family they're trying to put together. And, you know, the space thing is a massive invasion. Just all of a sudden, I used to physically get kicked out of the bed in the mornings when they were over, and I was like, okay, I'll just go, mate, because my children aren't small.
Yeah.
My husband's 6'5", so the kids are both 6 foot now. And
yeah.
we're big babies too.
Yeah.
And I just get up and go make breakfast. But then of course they'd think, oh, food, and they'd run off to the kitchen with you and say, oh, okay, well, that space didn't go well.
Yeah.
And it's just, they're always everywhere, and you just really struggle. I know I really, really struggled for those couple of weeks we'd have them, that just to find myself, I'd stress out beforehand. I would be completely anxious and just flipping out on the inside and trying to keep it calm, and all the while organising as many things to do together. You know, you do all that every day. You have to be doing something, of course.
Well, that's it. Is that, I mean, I imagine if they're just coming for those couple of weeks, must feel like there's a pressure that you need to make the most of it, and it needs to be fun the whole time. And, you know,
exactly. And it's, you know, you've got in my reading I learned about the guilty father, you know, where they feel bad that they've left the kids, and so they're always trying to make up for it, and they're always spoiling, and which is not good for the kids. And we're seeing a lot of the ramifications of that now.
Well, yeah, but you've now got 2 teens, so you know.
It kind of says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They're not all like, I think they're all about the same as ours. I think they're doing quite well to be normal children.
Yeah.
Which is a bit scary that everyone's going through these same scary teens.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, so, you know, when they first came into your life, and so you felt like I imagine it must have felt like you were somewhat of an outsider in that.
Yes,
and
definitely.
Did that cause issues between you and your husband?
It did, yes. I know we have never really fought about anything but the kids. Even on a day where the kids aren't home now, we have a great time. We don't have any problems at all. We just go about our normal relationship. But as soon as anything becomes about the kids, he struggled in the sense of watching somebody else discipline his children.
Yeah.
He struggled with that a lot. Like, you can't tell my kids what to do. Who the hell are you?
And I can understand that, being protective and
exactly. It is a natural instinct, isn't it?
Yeah. But at the same time, you're sharing that space as well, so difficult for both of you. It was and still is really difficult. As soon as you get on the same team, things get better. And of course, children are natural manipulators. So of course they played on everything, especially at that age when they were much younger. And well, no, I shouldn't say especially, probably still do. When they're younger like that, and they're just looking for the next cool thing to get. And, you know, and you're sort of watching it going, oh, do we say something? Do you not say something? Is it going to be met with hostility? Is it, you know, is he going to understand where you're coming from? And it was really hard being on the outside and trying to help, but trying not to be in the way, and try not to overstep or interfere.
Yeah, trying not to overstep the mum.
Yeah.
Which actually came up a lot when we were going through a family court when we were fighting to keep the girls here. They actually have put a lot of pressure on you that they don't want them calling you mum. They don't want you overstepping at all. Like, that's their mum. They have to build a relationship with her, even though she's given them up and she's not even showing up to court to fight and all these sorts of things. You still are not allowed to overstep that boundary.
So that's the court saying that they didn't want the kids calling you mum. Yeah.
Which was they had already started doing without me trying. It was very good. But yeah, so you're like, well, what do I do? Stop them?
Yeah.
They didn't want to do it. So
what did you do?
That's pretty much how you feel about most things. What do you do? And you just have to make a decision and run with it, really.
So did you have to tell the girls that they can't call you mum?
We didn't in the end. I talked about it with my husband, and we just thought, well, they've made that decision.
Yeah.
And
you're trying to create a connection with them.
Exactly.
Surely it would undermine that connection if you then go, you know, you feel close enough to me to call me mum, but actually I'm going to tell you that I don't want you to do that. And regardless
that's
of whether
right.
you say the court saying it, they're still going to hear, I don't want you to do that.
Exactly. And it's confusing enough for them as it is, the whole lot, bouncing between houses and
States.
everything right from the start of states. That's right. I think they've lived in every capital city in Australia almost, those poor kids.
Yeah. Well, they're better travelled than most of us,
Yeah,
aren't they?
I try to put a spin on it. Like, is they very lucky?
Yeah, this is true. So going back a little bit, you said that it got easier once you and your husband got on the same page. So how did you do that?
It really kind of happened by default in the end. I've always pushed communication to the point that I annoy everybody and nobody wants to talk to me. I become the big, evil, wicked stepmother in the background, of course, that everyone just gets frustrated with. But mostly it came through because he started to wise up to a lot of the manipulation and could see what I was seeing. And I mean, my husband always really agreed with me when we talked privately.
Yeah.
But then when we were with the kids, he would bluntly say right in front of them, no, that's not right. And no, you can't do that. And that sort of stuff. So,
yeah.
But now he sees them more for what they are than anything, and sees the need for discipline and recognizes why they can't do certain things and why we have to say no sometimes. And it was a very hard learning curve for him as well. It's how do you do that? It's the kids that you love.
Yeah.
How can we miss them for so many years? We used to want to see them more, but we couldn't. And
yeah.
It's such a hard position for him to be in.
Definitely. And I think it's really important to know that, when we talk about kids manipulating situations and things like that, often it's, they're not setting out to manipulate. They're setting out to try and get their needs met. And as
exactly right.
As you said, the girls had experienced a whole heap of trauma coming into this. They didn't know that their needs were going to get met. And so I guess they had to use the resources that they had available to them to ensure that they were going to be safe and that they were going to, to be met.
That's exactly right. And they did have, they didn't feel safe at all when they first came over because they were so used to not feeling safe.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons that I guess boundaries are so important as well, because they let kids know where they have that this is a safe space, and I will celebrate you when you go out. And I guess when we have safety, it means that we can feel safe to take risks, but within parameters, and knowing that if you take those risks and you fly, I'll celebrate you. But if you fall, I'll catch you. But if you go outside of those parameters, I can't catch you and I can't keep you safe. So that's why we have those boundaries.
That's exactly right. And it's one of the first things you really need to put into place in these sorts of situations, your own personal boundaries and boundaries for them. A big thing for me was you don't go in my bedroom. That was very difficult because my husband was like, why can't they go in their bedroom?
Especially when they want to get in bed with you.
He loved that in the morning. And all through the day, they're just used to being able to go wherever they want. And yes, you've got to put in that boundary saying, no, this makes me comfortable if we can do this and you've got this. And it is much better once you talk about boundaries. And like I said, communication is just a massive thing in all of it.
And that's exactly right. When we talk about boundaries, like I said, when you've got a child from a newborn, you get to put those boundaries in as they're growing. But when you inherit them when they're 4 and 6 and they're only coming into your life for a couple of weeks of the year, really difficult to put those boundaries in place, especially when you are the guilty father and you're trying to make up for not being there or, for everything else that they're going through.
And they just take offense to it. Why don't you want me in there?
Yeah.
Why don't you want me around? They're so used to everybody wanting them all the time, and they see things a completely different way. One thing I learnt about children is there's no logic at all.
Look, I think that they've got their own logic, but often there's no manual with them for us to understand what that logic is.
Right. Yeah. You just think that is a really strange thing to do.
Yeah.
But it seems completely thought through for them. So.
Well, that's it. I know there's been a few times where I've spoken to my kids and gone, talk me through your thought process as to how we ended up here. And they'll share it with me. I'm like, okay,
You're
I
like,
see how we got here,
yep.
but not a choice I think that we should have made. So also going way back to the beginning of this conversation, you talked about differences in parenting styles. So your parenting style, your husband's parenting style, and the girl's birth mum's parenting styles. So how did they differ?
Well, I found, I mean, where I've come from, I grew up, my parents are teachers, and we were quite a close family unit, and
We still are.
very sensible. Yes, that's right. We're very sensible, and teachers and education and all that sort of thing. So it was we had a lot of trust in the sense that I hope we developed that as a kid with mum and dad, that they learned they could trust us, and then that went, we could trust them, and that all came together. My husband, his parents were very young, very lovely people when they had him, and I think he was a bit of a special kid too. He was a bit of a troublemaker. So, I think they had to try a fair few things with them, but they were a bit more free, I think. A bit more of the 70s hippie style.
Yeah.
And he just wants to love, and which is obviously wonderful.
Yeah.
Just wants to love and give and give and give, and without really pulling back on anything to give boundaries or anything like that. And their mum, how would you describe her parenting style? I think there's a lot of yelling, they were left alone a lot.
Yeah.
And the eldest was really becoming the mother to the youngest. And that was difficult when she moved in with us, because I wanted to pull her back and bring her back into being a kid.
Yeah.
And be like, no, that's for us to sort out. You leave her alone. Stop telling her off.
Yeah.
You go deal with it, and that took a long time.
That must have been tricky as well, because, that thing of, well, she has to be in that parenting role when she's at home, because the reality is that, South Australia, Queensland, that was home. With you, they were just visiting. Yeah. So when she's at home, she has to be the mum, and you're not mum. So,
exactly.
You say you don't have to be mum. Well, actually, that's the role that I've taken on. That's the role that has become mine. And now you're stepping in and you're taking that from me.
That's right. And she was also very close with her father, even in the sense of sometimes acting like a wife.
Yeah.
It was that loving relationship that she's been missing. And it's all very complicated.
Yeah, it's funny because I obviously saw you recently, and I, even now, I noticed elements of that still happening, still feeling like she needed to tend to dad. And, and in a way that, as you said, it did feel more like the way that a wife would, rather than a young daughter.
Yes, I have pulled her up a few times, and that's a wife's job, honey. You be the kid, you love him in your way.
Or actually, he's probably big enough and ugly enough to do that himself, hun. So,
he would be.
Yeah.
Yes. But they also had their birth mother's mum around, their Uma. And she's also very lovely. I get along very well with her. But she would step in a lot and buy food and buy clothes and all the things they were missing at home, because she'd come over and the pantry was empty, and they would even stay with her for great lengths of time. And she's a lovely, strict German lady that will not take crap from anyone. So that was good for them, in that they were getting that discipline from somewhere. And you can still say, well, what would Uma say about that? And she wouldn't like that, So they were getting a whole nother side of parenting as well back then.
But that must have been very confusing for them.
It was. The poor kids. It was really a tough time. They came over, youngest has ADHD, but they both came over with huge, massive anxiety. Both had PTSD. The youngest has sensory disorder as well, so she was afraid of loud noises. When she came over, she was actually afraid of rain, to the point that she had a hysterical fit once. We were driving in the car and it started raining a little bit, because their house in Queensland flooded. So and their mum was quite dramatic with things. So so she had that as well, and she had a coordination disorder. So there's a lot going on with them. Yeah. And you think with trauma, it's never gone.
No.
Even when they've been with us for 4.5 years now, and even just last month, we still had a traumatic incident with the eldest where she just had a complete breakdown and, wanted to run away and all sorts of things, and was blaming which this sort of stuff comes up a lot, she direct everything they're angry about with their mum at me. And she was actually telling me all these things that you've done. And I was like, that wasn't me. I haven't done that to you, and it was my first "you're not my mother" too.
How did that feel?
I was always expecting it. You always got to expect that at some point, because teenagers are always going to say things, whether they're perfect and you're the perfect parents, they're always going to lash out like that. So I did expect it, but it was still a bit like, harsh.
Yeah, I think you can expect things, but still hearing it and expecting it and then hearing it, two very different things, aren't they?
It is. And she was in a big emotional state. She barely remembered the next day. So it's just one of those things that I think is always going to be in their life. And that's why we go to therapy, and we've always had them in therapy. Ever since they've been with us anyway. We weren't allowed to do it beforehand.
So how long have they been with you full time?
Yeah, 4.5. It was June. I don't even know what year. It's 4.5 years now. It's just the end of June came through. So
they were 8 and 10.
Yes, they were 8 and 10.
Yeah.
And then they went to the primary school up the road, and it was the first time they've been in a school for a year.
Oh my goodness.
Once they've been there for a year, and then now they're in the high school. So and being in the same house for that amount of time has made a huge difference as well. Stability with kids is really important.
So they were with you. How many weeks of the year were they with you when they were still living with mum?
I think we only had them for 2 weeks when they were in the Christmas holidays as well.
Yeah.
So that's 8 weeks, I guess, a year we saw them.
So,
which is nothing, really, isn't it? And every time they came over, they changed. That was the other difficult thing about the parenting. Every time they came over, they changed. They had a different tactic for their eczema that they were using, and we weren't told about allergies and things, so you had to figure it out for yourself. And then, because you're the big bad guy, because they've got a bruise or they've got a rash, or, God forbid they had a broken arm or something.
Oh gosh, how was that for you when? Actually, the fear, if they did have a broken arm, I imagine must have been,
yes,
because
terrifying.
There's so much around, like the stigma of dads, and dads are like, dads are more likely to be violent, and therefore, So whereas, if mum takes them to hospital because they've got a broken arm, well, they fell off a scooter. Whereas if dad takes them, they're having to, cover their back almost.
Yes, that was terrifying for me. The girls, they were, as I said, the youngest had a coordination disorder anyway, and they were both quite clumsy, but not afraid to run out there and go crazy. So every time they went outside, 5 minutes later, they're back in bleeding.
Oh, God.
No matter what they were doing. They could have been on the scooter or just walking.
Yeah.
It's just how they were, And because of that, I always wanted to try to stop them doing things, because I've got that fear if something happens and we send them home.
Yeah, CPFS is going to be on your doorstep.
Well, that's right. And I was never allowed to say anything, never allowed to discipline or stop them or anything like that. So that was a massive part of the anxiety, definitely, that you've got to deal with.
Yeah.
No control over any situation.
Oh, gosh. And so much added burden. Like, my kids go out and they're always climbing something or, whatever.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, it's awesome. But there's the fear that they're going to hurt themselves. But my fear is just that my child may get hurt. Not that, well, my child may get hurt, CPFS may get involved, and then I may lose being able to see them.
Exactly. Because you're always going to be, as the outsider, always going to be the easy blame. And
yeah, you should have been looking after them, or what did you do to...
Why weren't you watching them? And it's like, well, where's Dad? Hang on.
Yeah.
But really, none of it should be your responsibility. You shouldn't even have to be there.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, they're with Dad, okay.
Yeah.
And some stepmothers do take that road, and I totally understand that. That's just like, right, this is your time with the kids, especially if they're there for a weekend or something.
Yeah.
And you let it go, and you just let them have that time and try to stay out of it. But at the same time, you're always going to be an outsider then.
Yeah, well, that's it. And surely for the kids, you want them... I understand that, you want Dad to have that relationship with them, but you want the kids to feel as though they're welcome and they're loved, and so to do that, you need to show up.
Well, that's right. I mean, how would the kids feel from that side of things?
That's
Exactly.
it.
They're going to think, well, she always leaves whenever. It's always going to be she. You know,
Yeah.
she always leaves when we come over. So doesn't she like
She
it?
doesn't
Doesn't
want
she
us
want
there.
to
She doesn't want to spend time with us. Yeah.
So it's always, but in the end, I guess it's a choice you have to make for your own mental health.
Yeah.
You know, whatever works best for you in your mental health and the situation you're in.
Yeah. So what I was going to say before I got derailed myself with the thought, no, it was me. I derailed myself with the thought of all of, went into a tailspin about the risk of them breaking an arm. So I was going to say that you'd gone from having them 8 weeks a year to then them moving in full time.
Yeah.
So were you both still FIFO at the time? We
had just come back. My role, it was when the oil and gas crash happened in whatever year it was, one of the more recent ones.
Yeah.
So my role had been taken out of the field and I was back here just before we got married. And then my husband was actually working in Papua New Guinea at the time, so we weren't working in the same place anymore. He had taken that role on because it went through Queensland.
So he could see them.
He could see them on the way through.
Yeah.
And he had a role that came up in Perth, or the supervisor over here, which is what he was doing over there. And we ended up taking that. We both said, we have a feeling that you're just going to need to be in Perth. We're going to have, I think it's that time. We sort of was trying to start to get whispers that we might be able to try to fight for them, because it's not easy for the dad to get them.
No.
There has to be really extenuating circumstances. And for many, many years, we wanted to make that fight. But my husband was very afraid of losing them, because you lose and that's it, you've lost, and they're gone forever. Whereas they had sort of a half decent relationship where we could see them when we were able to. So he took a role back on in Perth, and might have only been a month, I think, before they came over. But it was certainly something that it was another thing we were adjusting to.
Yeah.
It's really a massive adjustment going from, 3 weeks on, 3 weeks solid at home to do whatever you want, having to suddenly do that in 2 days on the weekend. I still don't know how we're supposed to do it. It's been 6 years or something now. I think
I'm still struggling with it.
And we also moved into a new house that February.
Yeah.
So we got married September, moved into a new place in February, both started working back in Perth, and the new house is a 2-acre block. So it's not, that's how we got the little farm. And then the kids moved in. And so it was all this massive, just constant adjustment.
Yeah. Of those, I think, what is there, 10, the 10 most stressful life events that are, possible, and you've got 4 of them on there.
Well, that's it. And this is all in that 6-month period. And and then when they first came over, my husband wasn't able to take time off yet. He'd just started in the new role. And I think it was just finishing up in school. So it wasn't quite WA school holidays, because I think they missed their last week of that term.
Yeah.
Before starting. And it was quite crazy. I was at home with them solid for a couple of weeks.
So you took time off?
I did. I stayed home. I tried to work from home. That was insane.
Yeah.
I think there was even a moment where my daughter put an umbrella through the light fitting.
Oh,
don't
God.
look away for a minute.
You think, please don't electrocute yourself the first week you've come to live here.
So, because they're not wanting to listen. They've just come over, and it's all a massive experience for them. And the eldest at that point couldn't be in a room by herself. She was so traumatized. She couldn't be alone. She couldn't shower. She couldn't do anything alone. And you'd find this shadow following you around everywhere, which is a massive thing to get used to
especially when you're used to your own space.
Exactly. And I was alone a fair bit too, because my husband was on 4 and 4s and on a different roster.
Yeah.
And we'd go 8 weeks or something without seeing each other, and all of a sudden you're responsible for these people, and
24/7
space. And I'm like, and I'm not a massive hugger and things anyway, so it's like, oh, you're in my bubble.
You're in my bubble all the time.
As like a new mother would need to suddenly get used to, like when their toddlers are moving, they start to follow you everywhere, don't they? And
Well, yeah, and there's, even from when they're newborns, there's, you hear a lot of mums who will use terms like "I'm touched out," and it's that same
Yes.
kind of thing as, I've constantly, it's this constant need to be holding them, this constant need to be feeding, or just there's always somebody who's attached to me at all, and it's as much as we love them, it's draining.
Well, yeah, it is draining. And it's not something you can really say to them either, especially when they're a bit little, that they don't understand at all.
No, when they're a newborn, you can hand them to dad and go, I need half an hour where nobody's touching me, talking to me, or asking for anything from me. But, when they're 8, you can't really say that.
No. And that is a massive thing to get used to, the asking everything, like the mum.
Yeah.
That's really quite insane. You just think, wow, I am so amazed by single parents through all of this.
Yeah.
Just think it's got to be so hard. It's hard enough with the two of us.
100%.
One of us, that's just, it's too hard. You can't do it all.
No, I agree 100%. I don't know how single parents do it. I take my hat off to them.
Yeah.
So, I guess, how did you adjust to that initially, where you went from, I guess, your entire life changed overnight?
I don't think I ever did. I'd love to say I'm coping. You think it goes up and down. You have good weeks and bad weeks, and it still changes day to day. The kids' hormones kick in, and these 12-year-olds are crazy with the hormones. It's suddenly like, oh my God, who's that kid?
Yeah.
But I'm not sure you ever really do. You just keep surviving and you keep dealing with what's in front of you. And luckily, my company has an employee assistance program, so we actually get 5 therapy sessions a year. So that's easy enough to just quickly do without. I must admit, I should have used them a lot more than I have. I did when they first came over. I started to really struggle and really turn inward, and my mental health was just not good at all. I would go to bed every night just so wound up and just thinking, why am I doing this? And you'd have to start with, I had to hold everything back. I couldn't say anything at all. And then we started to try to be parents, but it was also difficult because any wrong turn and the kids will arc up in court, or say to their mum, they said this or they did this, and then that's it, you've lost them again. And we were treading eggshells for so long. But it all builds up, and it's just an impossible thing to deal with, really. I've never done anything harder in my life, and I don't think I ever will.
Did you have, apart from going to therapy, which is amazing, did you have
really good, surprisingly.
Did you have any strategies that you used to actually look after you and to look after your marriage as well?
Yes, well, I did read books. There's a few, Step Monster and The Happy Stepmother, and there's another one, Step Coupling, that you're just reading and wow, that is so true. That's exactly how I feel, and you're reading all of it, and even if nobody else is listening to you and you're just reading that, at least you feel better that you're not the only one. And I've got Facebook support, they help too.
That's the purpose of this podcast is, for other parents who are step parenting to go, you know what, I'm not alone. There are other people who are going through this who aren't living, the Netflix Hallmark movie life as being a step parent. And actually this is really hard. And other people are saying that it's really hard. It's not just me. So
that's right. I think that's what helps the most, to just know that your thoughts, no matter how dark or how evil you might feel with them, they are completely normal. And all the things the kids are doing is normal, and all the things your husband is doing is normal. And it was just to know that that's how it comes together, and you just got to find a way through it. The books definitely helped. A lot of research online. I read a lot online about different techniques to use with the kids. You just, I don't know if that's coming from teachers or what, but to me, it was education is the key here to find a different way. I still haven't found that perfect way of dealing with it all.
I don't think anybody ever does. I think, I call it
not, because it's crazy.
I call it informed eclecticism, which is exactly what you're saying. You know, you read all the books, you watch all the YouTube clips, you go to all the seminars and you do all of that and you take bits and pieces and then you feel like, oh, I feel like I've got this now. And then something happens and they all change and you're like, damn it, where's the next book?
You do work and you do try them and they will work for a short time.
Yeah.
But then kids, and they will always keep you on your toes like that because they will constantly change and find a way around what you're doing. And, you know, and I did always promise them I would never lie to them. And manipulation is a lie. So I've never tried to use any tactics to manipulate them into doing, because sometimes I know I can just say not to do something and they'll do it, you know, as I guess a lot of parents. And so, you know, you can easily just say, I must admit I did do it once. She didn't want to go to dancing class. I said, you know what, I don't think you'd be very good at it anyway. And no, I'm going to do that then, you know, because I was trying to encourage them to have some after school activities.
Yeah.
And she did enjoy it and she had a good time.
Yeah.
That is the only time I've done that to them. It's, you don't want to be like that. You want to have that perfect world of, yes, you can just all talk openly and yes, it's all full of house and, you know, it's everything's great.
How can I uplift them rather than how can I,
And you just have to keep trying and remember that it's not you and it's not even them. It's just a situation that sucks for everyone.
It is.
And you're the best out of it. You know, they're still, Mum hasn't visited. She visited once when they first moved over and she hasn't been since. So it's been over 4 years now. And I mean, COVID hasn't made things easier, but
look, it hasn't, and I was going to say that, but at the same time, there are the G2G passes that people have been using in order to see their children. So, yeah.
Well, that's it. And there's not a lot of phone calls, or they've got their own mobiles now, so there's a bit of text messaging, and which is hard because you don't really know what she's saying to them. And that's a bit hard. You try to talk openly with it, but they think you're going to be upset. You know, if they want to see their mum, they think they're hurting you. And so it goes both ways. Have just as much guilt about having another mum.
That must be very difficult for them to feel like they're stuck in between the two of you. You know, they don't want biological mum to think that they're happy with you. At the same time, they don't want you to feel like they want to have a relationship with her.
Exactly. And that's too much for a kid to deal with. And I do tell them that all the time. Look, adults struggle to deal with these situations. You know, you don't feel like you've got all this pressure on you. If you want to talk about it and it sounds awful, just do it. You know, if you don't want to talk about anything and you just want to ignore it all and focus on school, do that then. And you can deal with it as you grow up. And I was like, she will always be there. We will always be there. It's just something that you've got to work on you, because high school is hard enough.
Oh, my goodness, isn't it? Yeah.
I couldn't go back.
No, I know. There's people who say high school is the happiest years of their lives. I can only think they must have had miserable lives. So,
very much. So, you know, they've got to find their ways of dealing with it as well, and they lean on you a lot for that.
Yeah.
You get really good moments where you do see something that you've perhaps taught them. You know, I feel I've made them stronger in a lot of ways. I have all strong women in my family, and the girls are very strong. Now they'll stand up to me. They're so strong.
Yeah, my two girls, well, actually all of my kids stand up to me, and I think I've gone wrong somewhere. This was not how this was supposed to be when I was, you know, trying to teach them to be strong, independent young women. It's backfired.
It does backfire. It does. But hopefully one day you'll turn around and go, yep, no, I made that. That's a good kid.
Yeah.
You know? But there's little things like that, and they quote you.
Yeah.
And you know, and there's moments, especially the youngest, she comes into me and she goes, I'm going to ask Mum, because she will never lie to me if Dad's messing with her, and she'll ask me, did this really happen? And I'll have to tell them the truth. Santa was hard. I have to lie to your kids like that. But luckily they're through that now.
Cute.
About 11.
Difficult conversations. So you talked about having strong women in your life. How did they respond to you having, well, all of your family, going from I don't want to have kids to having two stepchildren who, in the nicest possible way, came with a whole heap of baggage?
That's right. Which you don't ever want to see somebody you love walking into something so difficult, do you?
Mm.
So they were amazingly supportive, of course.
Mm.
I cannot fault any of them in any way. I could tell probably dad especially had the worry,
Yeah.
especially, it can mess you up in so many ways, even financially,
Yeah. Well, having to
especially
fly
when,
them over and fight for them, it's not
I
cheap
mean,
for
that was a
court,
big
is it?
commitment where we paid all the school fees and all the school uniforms and maintenance and flying.
Yeah.
And then we spent thousands whenever they were with us.
Yeah.
But even before we had them, there could have been many things could have gone wrong that, the birth mother would be going for a lot of our finances and things, like anything can really go wrong that can mess up the other partner's life
Yeah.
and the way things are going. But we were pretty lucky. We got through it all. And I know he had that worry. And mostly, luckily, coming from a family in education, they all had seen so much trauma
Yeah.
with the kids at school. My auntie was a principal of an Aboriginal community, Jigalong, up north.
Yeah.
And, she's been around the block so many times, and mum and dad were both at bad schools at one point or another. So they just complete welcoming arms and just really more than anything felt for the kids in the whole situation.
Yeah. I think that because they had that experience possibly made them more wary because they knew what that could potentially mean for everyone.
Exactly. That is very true. They were really good. I think they were surprised as well.
Yes.
Someone who didn't
yeah.
Meeting my husband, they understood. They all instantly loved him, and even my sister's husband gets along with him. So that's good. Got the brother-in-laws together.
Yeah.
But they did really well. I can't fault them at all, and I would totally understand any worries they had because it's a scary situation for anyone.
And
still could be.
And I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Does it feel like your parents treat your girls any differently to your nieces and nephews?
No, I don't think they do at all. Not that I see. As you said, it's pretty tricky in the sense that they're born into the family and you're there for the birth, aren't you? All my nieces and nephews are all visiting in the hospital and all that. But the girls were pretty young when they started coming over, and we did include them in a lot of the family events when they came for Christmas and things like that. And my family would always ask, are the girls going to be there for Christmas this year? And we'd all accommodate, and they'd all get presents whether they were here or not. And they really spoiled them rotten. I think it was probably harder on the girls than it was for my family.
I was wondering that because they're
really from outside.
That's it. They're not their biological grandparents or biological aunties and uncles. And then it's another layer of guilt that, well, I've got biological grandparents and now there's another set that and how does that work?
Yeah, it's I think they still struggle with it a bit. And that was another thing that came up with when I got the you're not my mum. It was, I don't want anything to do with your family, but that was just a heat of the moment stuff. My niece was very young, so she's only 2 years younger than our youngest.
Yeah,
sort of a 2-year age gap between the three girls in the family.
Yeah,
and so they get along quite well. And she was just so happy to have some female cousins that she would want to see them. I want to see them. So she was always spending time with us when the girls were over.
Yeah.
So they've all kind of grown up together in that sense. That's quite good. And everyone's always been so nice to them. I think the hardest part was because I was supposed to be the enemy, especially before they lived with us. Okay, if I'm the enemy, all these nice people have to be the enemy too. And we're accepting gifts, but we're not supposed to, it would have been, I could see
lots
them
of
struggling.
cognitive dissonance going on and lots of discomfort around, I'm supposed to feel this, but that's not what the experience is like. And
that's right. And then they know they've got to be polite,
but at the same time, and while I'm being polite, is that then being disrespectful to my mum?
Well, that's it. Are you betraying your mum by enjoying somebody else's company?
And I'm going totally off track here. Sorry, it's so unlike me. Was mum, what was she like with, did she feed the girls that you can't trust Jen because she, or was she, I guess, positive around you, well, and their dad having a
She
relationship with them?
was definitely not positive.
Mm.
Yes, without trying to be nasty. She definitely went out of her way that I was the enemy to make them. She was also trying to get them to get whatever they could out of dad all the time too. So it wasn't just me, but it was, I'm the other woman. I believe she told them that I took him, even though they were divorced when we met. So it was, was a big confusion for them, because I stole dad away and all these things she would tell him, and it wasn't nice.
No, there's
but
just so many layers of difficulty there.
Yes, there's always. I mean, I don't know if there is any uncomplicated family anymore, but certainly our situation was pretty rough.
So if you were to meet, somebody who, was working FIFO and had fallen for the bloke who lived in the donga next door, who had 2 kids, what would you be telling her? Or even if they weren't living in dongas, you know what I mean.
So a friend of mine wanted to take up with somebody that had kids. I think I'd just be saying, really, really think about it first. Really think about what you want from it. And because I know I did think about it, and I know I didn't exactly go in with my eyes closed. I know children are hard work. That's one reason I never wanted them, because I was never so naive to think, oh yay, babies, they're difficult work for a long time. It was never the fear of birth or anything that stopped me. It was fear of children. 18 years of So you'd have to you can't tell them not to, because I mean, if you've met the person that you love, then what can you do? Love takes you wherever it's going to take you. But you do choose to a certain point, I think, and you have to really consider every aspect of it. And if you're prepared to be in that position where you're going to have these kids, and whether it means you'll have more with them, or just have them, then something you've really got to consider.
And I guess what I'm hearing is, knowing where you're getting to make those choices is when you have this idea around the kind of life that you want to create together, and knowing that life that you have had this mental picture about, this is going to look very different. How flexible are you with that mental picture about the kind of life that you want? And are you prepared to flex enough that you give up what you had thought your life goals were in order to be with somebody who, I guess, that relationship's going to mean that your life goes in a very different direction?
That's exactly right. Because, I mean, essentially, you give everything up. I mean, I have. We've given everything up to have the kids here. We both have, not just me. My husband did as well. We were certainly enjoying the cruisy life. Quite easy. As difficult it was when we had them over, at the other times it was just us and we could do whatever we want.
Particularly with FIFO, with 3 weeks off, to go and, do whatever you want.
Yeah, especially when we're on the same roster.
Yeah, nice.
Go to the pub. Yep, no worries. That's you just let go of everything.
Whereas
nothing
now okay, so we can go out, but at the same time we've got to make sure we're back for school pickup. We've got to get them to this therapy appointment. We've got to take them to this appointment. Yeah.
Oh, there's so many. I don't know how parents do it. It's always the dentist and always the orthodontist and doctors and therapy and there's always so many things with the school. That surprised me the most. Like, they came over and they're that age, and I'm like, all of a sudden you're doing book week costumes, and they've got to be the best of the costumes. You can't just throw something on them. There you go. You've got to hand make it, and it's got to be perfect. And the mothers, I think, are competing way too much. That's
just so you know, I totally don't buy into that.
And you can't, I've tried. It was hard because the kids wanted you to. It was like, if I didn't do it, then I'm not good at being their mum. No. But it was like, you do realise I work, and most of the mums at your school don't, for a start. They have a bit more time. And we're trying to do this, working full-time full-time kids, doing everything. You're somehow supposed to be there for all the assemblies and all the dances and everything. And it was just like, our kids could not grasp that, no, I can't be there. Yeah. I've got to work.
Yeah.
They had to be walked to their classroom when they first moved over because they were terrified of being alone.
Yeah.
So I was having to be there. That's not enough hours to get a day's work in between morning and afternoon pickup,
And you're
So
right, it is exceptionally difficult. We need, I've said it multiple times, we need to parent like we don't work. We need to work like we don't have children. At the same time, we're expected to volunteer. We're supposed to be on the P&C. We're supposed to be, running them left, right, and centre, regardless of regardless of whether you're the stepmom or biological mum.
That's right. It's insane.
It is, and I work full time outside of the home. My husband works part time outside of the home, and then from home. Despite the fact that my husband is the primary contact for the school, they will still call me first because it's the mum's role to come and pick up a child when they're sick.
Yep, and they still do it whether you're a stepmom.
Yeah.
Like, hang on, I really shouldn't be involved.
That's it. Like, I'm not even on the school contact list.
But I was filling in all the school paperwork.
Yeah.
Just look at these roles easy, don't we?
Yeah.
Can't help it.
I think one of the other things that I heard you say as well is the importance of, going back to that thought of if you have a friend who's potentially going to be moving into a relationship where stepchildren are involved, the importance of reading as many different books as you can and creating some sort of network with other people who have shared experiences is really powerful. And therapy is the other thing that I've heard you say as well.
Yep, definitely. It's just like we said before, just knowing there's other people and what you're thinking is not unusual, and you're a good person. You're just trying to make the best of a situation, and you've just got to find the way that you can deal with it the best. Even if you need medication or anything, like you should never be ashamed of that. It's really, really hard, and nobody can just go in and do this and find it easy. I'm sure of that. No, some women look like they do it so well.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're feeling a part on the inside like the rest of us.
Well, that's it. And I think I'm going to completely butcher the saying, but there's something along the lines of don't compare your reality to somebody's Instagram version of their life.
Definitely. Because something that's hard to teach the kids.
Yes, it really is. But I think the reason it's hard to teach the kids is because so many adults struggle with it as well.
Well, that's right. That's right. And that's all they see. They don't know. They haven't lived it. So, it does look like everyone's got these perfect lives. It's not the reality of it all. And everybody's struggling with something.
That's exactly it. And we don't know what it is. And part of that's because we don't have a village, so we don't share. And part of it's because, we've been taught to try and, you don't air your dirty laundry in public.
Yes, that's right. I still do it. It was still, this last incident, I still didn't speak about it at first with my family because I didn't want them to view the kids differently.
Yes.
I didn't want them to then go, how can you treat, my daughter or my sister like that? But in reality, they understood because even though they're their own children, they're kind of going through the same sort of stuff. So.
Yeah, and difficult as well because you don't want them to, you don't want them to say something against the girls in support of you. But then when your temper's calmed down to then go, oh, well, this is what they actually feel about the girls?
Yeah. Well, that's it because there's always you're not really family, are you?
But you are.
Anyway.
That's exactly it. They're the family that you've chosen.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's what I say to my therapist whenever he says, I'll be talking about something and he may say, but that's not, you don't have to do that. That's not your problem. Why, you can stand back and say, no, I'm not the mum. I don't have to do that. But then I'm like, yeah, but I have chosen to be here and I have chosen that role. So it's like, and then I guess that's his way of reminding me that it's my choice and makes me feel better about that, I guess. It's all these things that you do that, you should step back on, but you just can't help it. And the kids, I never really stood up and said, right, you're here now. I'm going to be the mum. I was happy to take care of them. I was happy to do all that sort of stuff, but still was like, I would be like this sort of auntie role maybe, or a friend.
I'll be your dad's wife.
Yeah, that's right. I guess because they're lacking that bit, they're constantly craving it.
Yeah.
Like everybody needs their mum, and you're constantly looking for that caring, and it just happens. You just fall into it and they need it. So you do it, but then you go, oh, I'm not ready for that. And
do you feel ready now? Like how many years in?
Hard to say.
I'm 16 years in to my parenting my eldest, and there's still times that I think I'm not ready for this.
Yeah.
I am not
Definitely.
qualified. I am not experienced enough. I am not ready. So
Luckily, my husband and I are usually both sitting there going, how are we supposed to do this? How
yeah,
can we get through this? We both just have no idea.
yeah,
They, constantly are changing, throwing something else at you that you just think, oh my God, okay, how do I deal with that?
yeah,
And then especially when it's something that they're supposed to be dealing with, and it's very
yeah.
difficult.
Oh, look, parenting is, like I say, it's one of the hardest jobs in the world, I'm sure, and the one that we are least qualified for. Mm.
Definitely.
Yeah, there's, half the stuff we go through, I think that's not in any of the books I've read. So,
We come from great families. If we're struggling with it,
yeah,
I've
it's
got the best
tricky.
parents that you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
And I still find it difficult day in, day out to figure out what to do. And I mean, it's changed anyway since they were raising us
Yeah,
because
definitely.
of technology. And,
Yeah, no, I think you just wing it.
You just wing it.
Yeah.
Screw it up and try again later.
That's it. And do you feel like a mum?
I do. I find myself speaking about the kids a lot. Even at the Christmas party we just had, you work Christmas do and you end up talking about the kids. And
yeah,
I guess that's what parents do, isn't it? And you can't help it. And I've always thinking about them, always thinking, oh, they'd like that when you're at the shops, or so I don't really know how else you really can be a mum if you're always thinking about them and doing things for them and wondering how they're going and how this thing went today. And then I guess I do. I feel responsible for them. Want them to grow up to be good people, and whatever happens with our relationship later, once we don't have to legally be responsible for them anymore, whether they still want to be around, and just have to wait and see. But
yeah, you've got a few years for that yet.
A few years still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long do you think it took before you stopped seeing them as kind of invading your house, or when they were coming over? How long before you went, oh, actually, I do feel like their mum, and I love them as my children?
Well, it's hard to say because you're constantly reminded that they're not your children. Like, I think the elder said the other day about something about my real mum, and you're kind of like, well, that's a hard term because yes, birth mother, but real mum, like,
yeah,
like who is your real mum? But you're constantly reminded that you're not, but you also always feel like
you are.
I always say, yeah, my daughter's this, and you're constantly thinking about them and feeling like you're the mum.
And I noticed that when you speak of them, you do always say my kids and my daughters. You don't ever preface that with my stepkids or my husband's kids.
And I don't anymore at all. I don't. There's moments as well where the kids introduce me to their friends and things, and everybody, obviously them being blonde and 6 feet tall and me being brown hair and 5'3", everyone goes, you don't look like your mum. And then they explain, which I always felt for them. That's difficult.
Yeah.
So I'm like, so I've tried to teach them that, look, it's okay that I'm your stepmom. Like that's fine. It's normal.
Yeah.
It's great. You've got more parents that love you than other people might.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. Like it's a very normal thing these days. So don't be ashamed to say that's my stepmom. So they've been pretty good with that.
Yeah.
It's just another thing that reminds you, isn't it? So, and I mean, you always know that you didn't give birth to them. And there's always that, it's always a play between the two, whether you're their mum and you're their stepmom. You never quite feel like you belong, but you always treat them like your kids. And the way I assume I would treat my kids, obviously never having kids, I don't know how I would have treated my kids. But, you just have to deal with each moment and not think too much about it, I think.
And at no point after the girls moving in did you think, in for a penny, in for a pound, let's have another one?
We did talk about it. My husband certainly said, but you've got till I turn 40, and I'm getting too old for kids. I don't want to deal with the young part of it anymore. But I said to him, no, I don't want it. But he did push it a lot. And I did have a moment of, well, they're here now.
I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah. For me, it was more the sake of I couldn't do it to them by that point.
Yeah.
Like they'd already been through so much that it was like, if I put if we have another one, they're just going to more feel like outsiders.
Yeah.
They're going to feel like, well, that's your kid and we're not.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, their mum did have another one after that was my dog. If you're wondering what that noise was, after they moved over here about a year maybe, she had another one. So that really hit them really hard, that she was moving on with her life without them, and I just couldn't do that to them. It would just be horrible. They lost their dad for enough years while they didn't live with us, so making them feel like he was moving on without him with another woman would just would add to their stress.
So, well, it sounds like it's been a roller coaster.
Yes, one that I think we've still got another good 5 years of ups and downs. At least.
Yeah. There might be a few loop-de-loops thrown in there as well.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, a few upsy down things. And I'm hopeful after that I can turn around and go, right, they're good people. They've got their life now and we've got ours, and we'll visit and get along however we do, and we can do some things for ourselves by then.
Oh, look, I think most parents have that idea that, we always want to be there for our kids, but at some point, there'll be times where you do feel like you've got a bit of freedom to be able to go out and do things for yourselves as well. Yeah. And hopefully when it gets to that point, you still know each other well enough that you want to still spend time together. Yeah, that's it. But if not, hey, you get to learn who you are together again. So.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, have you got any final thoughts that you want to share?
Just be as open with your partner as much as possible if you're going through the same sort of situation, and even with the kids, even if they don't like what you're going to say, if you're always honest with them about it, they will come around. And they may go back again, but they will always respect that at least they can always come to you for an honest answer for things, and just keep going, keep sticking with it, and find whatever you have to do to feel better each day, even if it's just for that one day. Yeah. The small smiles. I mean, we talked about my rescue animals and things, and that for me is really, that came about only because we got the kids a dog, which I was terrified about because I thought I don't have time for that.
I don't have time to work full time, let alone work full time and raise 2 girls, and now you want me to look after a dog as well?
Puppy that no one else can take care of, but luckily she loved me the most.
Yeah.
So, and you just opened my eyes up to this whole other world of people that needed rescuing, animals that needed rescuing, just like the girls, and that makes me happy each day when I see them. So even if it's just a moment when you feed them or whatever, you've got to find something for yourself in amongst it all. And that's what all the experts say and all the books say, but it's not easy to do. And you feel guilty every time, as any mum does, anytime you do anything for yourself. And I'm still not very good at it.
Guilt is a wasted emotion. Just going to put that out there.
It is. There is a lot of guilt, but you do have to put it aside. But to just find the bliss where you can and enjoy that moment, as short as it is. Yeah. And that's it. You can always find moments of joy. That's right. Sometimes you just need to remember to look for them. That's it. And the kids, they do their best. They're good kids, and most of them are. They've gone through too much. And I feel for all kids now that with everything they're all going through, it just seems just so awful that our lives were so simple in childhood. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And, when you're living with kids who have experienced trauma and PTSD and, you rhymed off 5 or 6 other diagnoses that your kids are living with every day. It's not easy for them, and they're doing the best they possibly can with the skills and experiences that they have, but they haven't been in a situation to learn those skills, or they haven't been in a situation to know that, I'm safe in this, so therefore I don't need to do X, Y, or Z. So I think maybe you're just starting behind the 8 ball a little bit. Yeah, well, that's it. And you just have to work together on figuring it out, really.
Yeah, or just winging it together.
Winging it's good.
Sometimes I think figuring it out, that's asking a bit too much. So thank you so much for sharing this last hour or so with me. I really appreciate all of your time, and I appreciate that I was able to ask some quite curly questions and took the conversation in some different directions. So thank you for all of your yeah. I appreciate your time and your honesty and being prepared to be so vulnerable as well.
Yes, that's not easy.
It's not. Honestly, I think vulnerability takes the most amount of strength possible. But yeah, thank you very much for sharing this time with me. And I hope that anybody who's listening who is a step parent can hear some of the experiences that you've shared and know that they're not alone. And there are other people out there who are going through something really similar and who have some shared experiences. And I think it's really powerful to know that you're not alone.
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of A Hidden World of Women, a podcast brought to you by Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. For more information on the services we offer, head to whws.org.au or Women's Health and Wellbeing Services on YouTube and social media. Looking forward to the next episode where we uncover the hidden world of women.